Hey guys, Chris Woolley here and welcome to part 3 of this background tutorial. If you've missed the first 2 parts, I walked you through how we photographed this background on location and all the camera settings and what we're looking for creating your own printed backgrounds. In part 2, we looked at the Photoshop and resizing and how to order a background. And now in part 3, I've got my order in. This is a background from Background Town and it looks gorgeous and it's exactly what I was looking for. And I'm gonna walk you through how I set it up and how we photograph with it so it looks amazing. So let's take a peek at the background. So we're gonna come over here and I've set up just a simple background stand. You can find these just about anywhere. It's a simple pull method, goes through the rod pocket up top. A couple things when setting it up that I find to be helpful. I like to have the front bar point out so it's outside of the mat versus rotated in. So paying attention to where that is. I also put a little bit of spike tape on there so if I have a client they can very visibly see where the leg is so they don't accidentally step on it. It's very bright. Along those same notes, I've got sandbags on each of them so they aren't going anywhere just in case somebody does happen to bump them. It's a safety thing. It makes it really, really nice. I've gone ahead and this is an 8-foot by 10-foot background. It's on the background stand. Next thing we want to do is make sure that it is taut. And to do that, I'm using these clamps. And these are just simple clamps that we have, and you basically pull the fabric tight and then clamp it. And that's going to help get rid of any wrinkles or imperfections that are in there. So one of the nice things about this background in particular is that it's made from ultra cloth, which is wrinkle resistant. So that means that you could throw it in the bag and bring it on location or set it up in your studio if you have to compact it and put it on a shelf. And as long as it's stretched taut, you're not gonna see any of those wrinkle marks in it. That's huge for saving time because that means you don't have to bring a steamer on set or steam it every time that you want to use it. So pretty helpful there. So this background is 10 feet wide. I've already got it stretched out. You'll notice that there are minor things that I'm running up against this joint here. So I've just got it stretched taut as I can, really focusing on this main area. So next thing we want to do is look at lighting. How do we make this background look gorgeous and how do we match the lighting on our subject so that it goes with what this background is? So first thing that I like to do is set up my environmental lights. So how am I going to be lighting my subject? And let's start with the key light. So I've got a really, really large Brawley box that's over here. And the reason that I selected a large soft light source is because the background is very, very diffused. If we look over here, we don't have very harsh directional light. It's very soft. We can see it's kind of coming from top down. So I want to mirror that in my studio lighting so that it looks very, very soft. A large light source is going to do that. If you don't have one this large available, then you can use something like a shoot-through umbrella. Anything that's going to be soft and large, bouncing it off of a wall, anything like that will work fantastic. And I've got this positioned over so that it's just going to be gently sweeping light across my subject. And if I'm looking out maybe about 8 feet off the background over here, I've got it pointed so the center is kind of going across diagonal. So it's not pointed directly at my subjects, but it's feathering across. This is going to mean that when the light hits my background, it's going to hit pretty softly and evenly, so I don't end up with a hot spot on the background from what my key light is. Next, I'm looking at having a fill light. So something that's going to fill in the dark side, going to lighten up the eyes. Generally, you want this light to come from on axis, so where the camera is going to be at. In this case, I've got a light mounted right above this door here. This is just a simple beauty dish. I love it because it's small but throws light and is out of the way so I can have it mounted and working. You could very easily use another umbrella that's just above your camera coming from on axis. So with these lights coming together, they're now going to light my subject that's about 8 feet off this background. If you have more room in your studio, feel free to pull them further off. I'm in a pretty tight space, so 8 feet works really well. I can shoot a family in here or an individual, no problem. So now I've got my key and my fill. I just need to worry about getting some light on the background itself. So with this light, I've got about, with what my settings are, about f4 that's hitting this background. And I'm gonna be shooting at about f5.6. So I'm one stop underexposed on this background. So I wanna introduce about another stop of light on it so that this background glows just like it did when we were on location. So to do that, I've got two lights that are going to be hitting my background. And let's take a peek at those right now. So I've got a light, it's up here, just a simple one with a 7-inch reflector. And so this light is just aimed so that's going to be throwing light on the background. I've got one mirrored on the other side. So what's very tempting is just to point this light directly at the background and throw light on it. But we don't want to do that because we want to make sure that we've got an even amount of light from right here all the way over here, and especially in the middle. We want that to be the same exposure level that's hitting everywhere across. And the reason we do that is we don't want hot spots. We don't want the center part of the background to be super bright or one of the edges to be darker than what the other one is. We need very even lighting that's going across. So I've got a little bit of a trick to share with you. In case you don't have a light meter, here's what I do. So I find the width of my background. In this case, it's 10 feet wide. So I'm gonna cut that in half, 5 feet, because half of 10 feet is 5 feet. So I'm going to pull from where my background is, that 5 feet off the background, which is where I have this light set up. Next, what I'm going to do is look over here at this light, and I'm going to look through the umbrella mount that's here and point it at the very opposite corner. Okay, so if I'm looking at this, only about half this light is actually hitting my background. And the reason that I want to do that is that I want to have a pretty even fall off of light from here all the way over. And so that means I'm feathering this background light on, and this is kind of a cool trick that a friend of mine showed me, that when we angle it and point that light at the opposite corner, we're gonna get a ridiculously even fall off of light all the way across. That means we don't have to worry about other modifiers or things like that to get this even background. I've done the exact same thing on the other side. So if you are using two identical lights, just set them at the same power and adjust the power until you get the background looking like you want it. In this case, I've gone ahead and tweaked this and I've metered it so that I'm exactly f5.6 on my background. My subjects who aren't getting this background light are also at f5.6. So I can now shoot at f5.6 and have a beautifully lit background and beautifully lit subject. So let's take a peek at what this actually looks like with a real live family. We have our family here now, and let's take a peek at what the lighting's doing now that we have our models in place. We can see that from these background lights, they're coming forward and we're getting a little bit of spill that's on our subjects. Now this might be something that you like depending on what your background is. This could work as a really, really nice kicker or rim. If that's what you like, just leave it exactly as it is. It's okay. But if you want it to not be spilling onto our subjects, we need something to mask that out. And so we're gonna use a flag. In this case, I've got some large sheets of foam core here. You may have like a V-flat or something like that. All we have to do is just put it up so it's out of our frame, but we're just gonna be using it to mask the light that's hitting our subject. So we can see that the reflections that are coming around here, bouncing off the skin, are now gone on this side. I've got one that we can set on the other side. Little bit of a tip, when we're putting our tripod or light stand legs, make sure that they're not sticking out so that we can get as close to these lights as possible so that we can be as controlled as possible. So we're just coming up here and these are just blocking out those lights, gonna stick them in nice and tight, and now we are blocking them off. So now our background lights are completely isolated from the lights that are illuminating our subject, yet all the exposure on the background still exactly the same. So we've got some pretty nice light control going on. Let's take a peek at the camera settings real quick. We're gonna come over here to our camera. So I'm on a tripod still, just like I was when we photographed this, at approximately the same height. I'm slightly lower on this one because our subjects are slightly lower to the ground. If we were photographing all adults or an individual, we wouldn't have to be quite so low, but right here, it still looks really nice and our perspective's true because we're approximately the same height as when we photographed it. So it's going to look beautiful. You'll notice that I'm backed away from the subject quite a bit, and I'm using the telephoto function on the lens to compress the background. So instead of being a wider angle lens and in closer to the subject, I am backed further away and using a telephoto. So what that's going to do is it's going to allow me to have more of the background present in the image versus having the rest of the studio. So we've got some compression going on, just like when we photographed it. I'm at approximately 80 millimeters on this lens. If you remember, we were at about 50 millimeters when we photographed it, so we're pretty close to the same focal length. So everything, all the physics of the scene is going to work out really well. My settings for this are 160th of a second, just because I want them to sync with the studio lights. I'm at ISO 100, so we can keep it as clean as possible, and I'm at f5.6, so all of our subjects are going to be in focus, from our very, very front forward ones all the way to back behind, all going to be tack sharp. If I needed to, I could go like f8. I just need to pop up all my studio lights so that my exposure is correct on that, or change your ISO if you'd like to do that on the easy mode. So all of our subjects are going to be completely in focus. Now, one of the nice things about this compression and the already blurry background is that our subjects are going to be beautifully sharp and our background's going to be very, very soft. Now, this means that small details like stray hairs, frizz, things like that are all going to be in the photograph. If we're going to do a conventional green screen extraction, we might miss some of those or lose out on some of those details. So this one actually preserves some of those fun details. Okay, now that we've gone over all the technical specifications on it, let's actually do our family photo shoot. So we're going to make sure that we're brought in, we're all on the same plane, so that the lights, f5.6, are going to be even across all the subjects. Because remember, we want very, very soft, yet still directional light that's hitting it. It's still metered because we're feathering our main light source at 5.6, so everybody's going to look very even and really, really nice. So we're just making sure we're on that same plane and that we're all going to be within the composition of our camera, so that we're on the background and that's all we're seeing is the background. So we're going to have everybody kind of turn in. Kathy, can we point that way just a little bit? And Dave, coming this way. Patty, can you turn in just a little bit more? Yep, and you are doing perfect. We got little Nora there too. Excellent. Can we have your fingers just right up front? That's just going to frame us really nice. Hand in pocket is perfect, and I love that you're touching. All right, let's get a quick test shot and see what we're looking like here. All right, everybody, we're going to be looking right into the camera, making sure that I'm locked in, and just that great big smile. Here we go. Look at that nice even light everywhere. That looks beautiful. Let's get one more just for fun. Perfect. So this is all we have to do for creating our family portraits on the printed background. Let's take a peek now at what happens when we start doing individual or couple portraits, because we can get some interesting perspectives here. All right, so now we're going to do a couple of individual portraits and small groups, because this is where the printed backgrounds really, really shine. So we've got our two girls here, and I've added a small apple box down at the bottom. And this is going to do a couple of different things for us. So one, it's going to change height. So now we're a little bit more equal in what height is. But also the second bonus one is that if you have somebody that likes to wander around, she's going to stay up on here, so she's not moving around quite as much. So a little bit of a secret there, but it works really, really well. What I've done on the camera, if we come back over here, is I've rotated this to the vertical axis here. And that is going to allow us to fill the frame just a little bit more. So I am zoomed in, I'm at 105 millimeters on this. Other than that, my settings are all identical to what we have been. So we're gonna turn on camera. I can see that we've got the girls here, exact same settings. I'm just gonna get a quick test, make sure everything looks good. And we are getting that beautiful, beautiful look that's coming through. All right, girls, can you give your sister a hug? There we go, just like that. Oh, very soft, soft, soft. Can we open up just a little bit more? Right there is perfect. So we're gonna get a quick, there we go. So I wanna show you something. Oh, that one was a blank. We're gonna get one more, okay. Looking right here. How about a silly face? Can you stick your tongue out? There we go, okay. So let's look at something else that's kind of cool. We can now rotate the axis on this. So our subject's gonna stay in the exact same spot, but I'm gonna come around over here. Instead of shooting straight into the background, I am now shooting at a slight angle. This is gonna allow me to have a completely different background when doing these types of images, because I'm at a slightly different angle. So here's what this looks like just from this angle, and lighting's all exactly the same, but now I've got a little bit more of that tree that's in the background. Looking right here, ladies. There we go. Beautiful. And let's flip around to the other side. We're gonna shoot this direction just a hair, just like that, still on the tripod. Coming up, and we're looking right here. Beautiful. So now we have a variety of backgrounds, or what appears to be a variety. Exact same printed background, we're just changing our perspective so that we've got a completely different feeling. All right, so I've got one more setup that I want to show you, and this is for doing individual portraits with just a single light. So I'm still using my same light modifier, a very, very large light source, so that we don't end up with really deep contrasty shadows. And I'm gonna be using a small reflector. Well, I guess this one's pretty big, huh? We're gonna be using a reflector to bounce some of the light back in. So I've got my subject a lot closer to the background, just a few feet off of it. And so this is going to allow the light from our primary light source to hit the background and illuminate the background as well as our subject. And the reflector's just bouncing in some of that light to fill in those shadows. So what's really cool about this is that we can now move anywhere on this background. It's gonna look blurry. We're gonna have that great separation that's happening, and we're doing it all with one single light source. And that could be a window too. If we don't have studio lighting, you can still use this and pull off this look. So I'm zoomed in pretty tight. I'm still at f5.6 at 1/60th ISO 100, and we're just gonna get a quick portrait. I'm gonna open up just a little bit right here. We got our composition, leaning forward just a little bit, Patty, right there, and that great big smile. Excellent. So we have that really, really nice low contrast lighting. It's very soft and sweet, nondescript background. And look at this, I can now rotate just a little bit. Hey, I've got this tree in the background. She's staying exactly where she's at. I'm just changing my angle. Let's get another one. And looking right here, very cool. And if I want to have it a little bit softer light, so we don't have quite as much definition there, I just have to take my light source and rotate it just a teeny tiny bit. We're gonna open back up, and let's get another one. Looking right here again, Patty. Beautiful, and that great big smile. There we go, and that's it. That's all we have to do to use the printed background in the studio. If you guys have any questions at all, put them in the comments, and I'm happy to answer them. Thanks for joining me.